At my retirement party, my boss said, "He's the reason our team never reached top tier." My former protege glanced at me, ashamed. I just smiled. 6 months later, my tech patent was acquired for $12 million. "You know," Daryl said, swirling a weak cocktail at the open bar, "he didn't mean it like that." I watched his face. Same nervous twitch he had when he first joined the company at 27, all wide-eyed and eager. Now he had a shiny director title, 3 interns, and that tired look of someone who realized climbing the ladder came at a cost. I smiled, not because I forgave, but because I didn't want to waste the last few hours of my career giving Stuart the satisfaction of seeing me rattled. "It's okay, Daryl," I said. "You got what you needed out of this place." He didn't say anything else. Just nodded, looked down, and slowly walked away. My story isn't glamorous. It's not even particularly original, at least not the early parts. I was 29 when I joined Novara Systems, a small but promising tech company in San Jose. It was 1992, and I was one of only 3 women in the entire engineering division. I had just finalized my divorce. My ex-husband, Dirk, left me with a 6-year-old and a mountain of debt. Owen, my son, never asked questions about his father. Not even when he was old enough to. I poured everything into work. The long hours kept me afloat. It was tough in those early years. I wasn't just trying to earn a salary, I was trying to prove I belonged in the room. There was no real mentorship back then. If someone handed you specs and didn't mock your coding style, that counted as praise. I learned by doing, often picking up pieces that others left behind. Quiet wins. That was my thing. I was good at building systems that worked in the real world, code that wasn't flashy but didn't break under stress. I helped implement the firm's first customer management tools, laid groundwork for our later SaaS systems, and patched bugs on Christmas Eve while Owen slept on a beanbag in the corner of my office. Still, I never made VP. That chair always went to someone with less experience and a stronger handshake. I met Daryl when he joined Novaris nearly a decade ago. He was fresh from a Stanford master's program and was assigned to my team as part of a company-wide mentorship initiative. Tall, clean-cut, and unnervingly confident. He reminded me of my son, before he outgrew asking for help. At first, Daryl was curious about everything. He asked smart questions, challenged my approach respectfully, and brought new energy into the office. I liked him. I started letting him sit in on project meetings, introduced him to some of the old codebases, even walked him through my passion project, an AI system I was quietly developing in my spare time. Not company-sanctioned, of course. This was just mine. It was adaptive AI. Nothing radical, but I believed in its design, lightweight, self-adjusting modules that learned from user interactions in a clean, efficient way. I built the prototype at home on weekends, feeding it snippets of anonymized user data, refining the architecture until it started feeling real. I showed Daryl because I thought he might see the value. For a few weeks, he helped test some modules after work. He was enthusiastic, almost reverent. And then one Monday morning, I walked past his desk and saw a proposal open on his screen. The architecture was mine. The diagrams, the logic trees, all lifted straight from the weekend files I had shared with him. But my name wasn't on it. I stood there, stunned, long enough for him to notice. He turned pale. "It's just a draft," he said. "I was going to loop you in, Stuart wanted something fast and I thought maybe, save it," I said quietly. "I get it." And I did. He was doing what every ambitious person at Novaris eventually did, looking out for himself. The proposal never went anywhere. Stuart dismissed it as not market ready, and told Daryl to focus on the company's bloated data project, Titan Data. I, meanwhile, took my flash drive, deleted every version of the AI tool from the Office network, and kept my head down. For the next 5 years, I coasted. When my retirement date came up, I didn't expect a party. But HR said it was company policy. They booked the 7th floor lounge, ordered catered food from a nearby place in Willow Glen, and invited everyone on my email list. There was a slideshow, grainy photos of my early days. Someone had dug up a clip of the time I got stuck in the elevator during the 2003 blackout. People laughed politely. Then Stuart got up to speak. Now, Stuart is the kind of guy who built a reputation on smiling while cutting your budget. He's corporate to the bone, charisma on the outside, hollow within. I knew he wouldn't say anything sincere, but I never expected that line. Let's be honest, he said. It's fair to say Marla's resistance to certain methodologies may have slowed us from reaching the top tier sooner. The room went quiet for a beat. Some people gave awkward laughs. Others just sipped their drinks. I looked at Daryl across the room. He didn't laugh. His eyes met mine for just a second. Then he looked away. That was my cue. I stood up, thanked the crowd, said a few kind words, hugged a few colleagues, then left. No tears. No goodbyes. Just a clean exit. That night, I pulled out the old files from my home server. The AI project had been dormant for years, but looking at the code again felt like reading letters from an old friend. My son Owen had been pestering me for years to show the project to someone. "Mom, you've got gold sitting on your hard drive," he'd say. So I let him set up a meeting with a friend at a VC firm in Mountain View. I gave the pitch quietly, without slides. Just walked them through the logic. The way the system adapted without needing cloud dependencies. How it worked on mobile. How it learned silently in the background without overreaching. They ate it up. 3 months later, we signed the deal. $12 million for the full acquisition, plus future licensing rights if they commercialized it. The announcement hit the industry blogs with little fanfare. Just another tech acquisition in a sea of deals. But people at Novartis noticed. Daryl noticed. He texted me, "Is this the system you built back then?" I replied, "The one you tried to pitch?" "Yeah. That one." He didn't reply again. The thing no one tells you about vindication is how strangely quiet it is. You think there will be this big moment, fireworks, confetti, a triumphant monologue maybe. But no. I signed the papers in a modest conference room with a young attorney who called me ma'am and a notary who barely looked up from her clipboard. I wired Owen a small percentage as a thank you. He tried to protest but didn't push too hard. "You're the brains, Mom." "I just made the call," he said. Still, I could see in his face he was proud. He called me a unicorn founder, which made me laugh out loud. I told him I was more like a camel, surviving all those years without water or applause. The rest of the money? I didn't touch it for weeks. It just sat in a holding account, surreal. Like it belonged to someone else. In the meantime, the messages started. Most were subtle. An email from an old colleague, "Heard the news. That AI idea sounded familiar, winky face. Congrats." Another from HR, "We'd love to include your story in our internal newsletter. Let us know if you'd be open to a quick interview." Even Stuart sent an email. No subject line. Just a one-sentence message, "Impressive work. I'd love to hear more about your roadmap, if you're open." I left it unread. I didn't respond to any of them, actually. It wasn't spite. It was fatigue. I had spent 3 decades explaining myself, defending myself, minimizing myself. I didn't feel like doing it one more time, even if this time, it was on my terms. What I didn't expect was how the silence would feel after the dust settled. I moved to Pacifica in late February. The house I bought overlooked the ocean, just a short drive from Maury Point. Quiet. Windy. Clean air. I'd never lived near water before. Owen helped me move in, grumbling about my outdated tech setup. "You could at least get a Nest thermostat," he joked. I laughed, but part of me resisted. I liked the unplugged feel of the place. No Slack notifications. No late-night crisis calls. Just the sound of gulls and waves and the occasional foghorn that rattled the windows. I tried to fall into a new rhythm, morning walks, grocery store trips, tinkering with a new codebase just for fun. But retirement, even on your own terms, has a way of unmooring you. For so long, my identity was tied to being indispensable. Useful. The one they called when systems failed. The mentor. The fixer. Now, the phone didn't ring. The inbox stayed quiet. I didn't miss work, exactly. But I missed being needed. That's when the dream started. In one, I'm sitting in the Novaris conference room. The chairs are all empty except mine. There's a whiteboard in front of me with code written in dry erase marker. I recognize it, it's my AI system, but it's been scrambled, altered. Pieces are missing. I try to stand, but my legs won't move. In another dream, I'm at my retirement party again. Stuart stands at the mic. Only this time, he says, she never belonged here in the first place. Daryl is clapping. Everyone is. I wake up cold, even though I keep the heat at 70. Therapy wasn't something I ever made time for before, but a neighbor recommended a woman in Half Moon Bay, Dr. Chen. Mid-50s, warm voice, no nonsense. I told her I wasn't sure why I came. She nodded and said, that's usually when people need it most. I told her about the betrayal. About being told I was resistant. About raising a child on my own while managing server crashes. About being invisible in a room I helped build. She asked, did you ever think of yourself as angry? I said no, because I didn't have the luxury of anger. I had bills, and a kid, and a job. Anger felt like something people who could afford therapy had. She smiled and said nothing. The sessions didn't fix me. But they gave me space to unpack 30 years of swallowing my pride. 3 months after the sale, I received a LinkedIn request from Daryl. I stared at it for a long time. His profile was updated, Senior Director of AI Strategy. The same tone-deaf corporate language we all learned to speak fluently. There was a post he'd written about innovation through mentorship. I laughed out loud. I didn't accept the request. I didn't block him either. I just left it there. Like an unopened letter. Around the same time, Owen invited me to a networking event in Palo Alto. I declined the first few times. But he wore me down eventually. You don't even have to speak, he said. Just meet a few people. Low stakes. The venue was sleek and forgettable, one of those minimalist glass and concrete co-working spaces with fruit-infused water and too many succulents. Most of the attendees were in their 30s. Startup founders. VC scouts. People using words like synergy and pain point without irony. I stood in a corner nursing a ginger ale when a young woman approached me. Are you Marla? She asked. I nodded. I read about your AI system, she said. My team's been building something similar, but we hit a wall with modular learning. Do you ever consult? I wanted to say no. But I didn't. Instead, I asked her to tell me about her project. We ended up talking for an hour. That night, I sat on the deck of my Pacifica home, wrapped in a blanket, listening to the waves. I wasn't thinking about Novaris. Or Stuart. Or Daryl. I was thinking about the young woman at the event. Her questions. Her excitement. The way her eyes lit up when she described her project. It reminded me of myself. Not the version that had grown armor over years, but the younger one, before the betrayals and budget cuts and performance reviews. And for the first time since retirement, I felt something click. I didn't call it consulting. Not at first. When that young woman, Naira, sent a follow-up email thanking me for my insight and encouragement, I brushed it off. But she added a note, something that stuck. You made me realize I'm not crazy for wanting to build something simple and smart. Most people I've talked to just want flashy demos. That line kept repeating in my head. Simple and smart. It was the ethos I'd lived by. The thing that got buried under layers of office politics and male-dominated brainstorming sessions filled with buzzwords and too many slides. She asked if I'd be willing to meet her team. I said yes. Quietly. No contract. No compensation. They were based out of a shared office in Menlo Park. 4 people total, all under 30. Scrappy, caffeinated, and full of the kind of optimistic energy I had forgotten even existed. Their project was rough, good instincts, bad structure. A clunky AI decision tree that was trying too hard to be impressive. I pointed out a few simplifications they could try. We spent a few hours whiteboarding, and by the time I left, I felt useful. Not nostalgic. Not triumphant. Just useful. A few weeks later, Naira's team made me an offer. An advisory role. Just a few hours a month. It wouldn't be much, she said. Equity, mostly. I almost declined. I didn't need the money. And I wasn't sure I wanted back in. But Owen told me something that shifted my thinking. He came over one Sunday to help with the garden, though, truthfully, he mostly just poked at weeds and checked his phone. We were having lunch when I mentioned Naira's offer. He set his fork down and said, "You know, most people your age are trying to escape their jobs. But you're not like most people. You don't want to go back to Novaris, Mom. You want to go forward." I looked at him, and for the first time, I realized how much he had grown. Not just into a successful adult, but someone who understood me better than I did myself. So I said yes. I started spending a few afternoons a week at the Menlo Park office. At first, I stayed mostly quiet, letting them drive. I'd review architecture, ask questions, poke at logic models. It wasn't about control. It was about seeing the gears move again. One afternoon, they ran into a wall with their adaptive feedback model. It was looping responses too quickly, retraining on data that hadn't been properly filtered. I sketched a fix on a napkin, just a crude back-off logic using historical confidence metrics. Naira stared at it like I'd handed her a secret map. "We've been stuck on this for 2 months, she said. "You made it look like a crossword puzzle." I shrugged. "It's just experience." But later that night, as I lay in bed with a heating pad on my back and a tired but full brain, I realized it was more than that. It wasn't just experience. It was a different kind of seeing. The kind that only comes from being pushed out, discounted, underestimated. It sharpens you. Teaches you how to solve problems without credit, how to navigate without applause. Things began to shift quietly after that. One of Naira's engineers, a kid named Joaquin, started calling me Professor Marla. At first it made me cringe. But it stuck. They sent me builds to review. Asked me to look at investor decks. Suddenly I was getting looped into video calls and brainstorming sessions. And I didn't mind. Because for the first time in a long time I wasn't fighting for space. They gave it freely. Even more surprising, I wasn't angry anymore. Not at Daryl. Not at Stuart. Not even at Novaris. There's a strange release that comes with being past something. You don't forgive because they deserve it. You forgive because you're just done carrying it. Still, there were moments when the past came knocking. One morning I got a call from a blocked number. I don't usually answer those, but my gut said I should. "Marla," the voice said. I recognized it instantly. "Stuart." There was a pause. Then, I'd been meaning to reach out directly. I didn't respond. "I think about that day," he said. "Your retirement." I said something I regret. Another pause. Longer this time. I was under pressure. You know how the board was. I shouldn't have said what I did. Especially not in front of Daryl. Still, I said nothing. He cleared his throat. Anyway. I read about the sale. Impressive work. Really. I'd like to make it right, if there's ever an opportunity. I wanted to say a lot of things. About the years he dismissed my ideas. About the meetings I was left out of. About the way he publicly humiliated me in the final hour of a 33-year career. But instead, I said, "There's no need, Stuart." And I hung up. One night, as I was locking up the little Menlo Park office after a late session, Naira walked out with me. The street was quiet. The lights from the building next door had gone dark. "You ever think about building something again?" she asked. "I thought I already was," I said, nodding back toward the office. "No, I mean, your own thing. Something new. Something just yours again." I smiled. "Not yet." But I felt something stir. Not ambition, exactly. Not revenge. Just possibility. Possibility is a tricky thing. It doesn't arrive with trumpets or applause. It shows up like a whisper in your own mind, often late at night, asking, "What if there's still more?" I spent a few weeks sitting with that question. I still met with Naira's team regularly, but I found myself waking earlier, taking longer walks, and jotting down ideas that had nothing to do with their system. New ideas. Fragments of something forming in the back of my mind, a small, fast, ethical AI designed for independent creators. Artists. Therapists. Teachers. People usually left behind in the AI race. I started sketching. By spring, I had built a prototype I called Marcy. Not an acronym. Just a name that sounded warm. Familiar. Marcy didn't require cloud access. She didn't harvest data. She didn't sell user habits to third parties. She learned through private, local usage and adapted to support her users' routines with quiet, non-invasive assistance. Think of a personal assistant who doesn't shout or nag, who simply learns and helps. It was simple. Elegant. My kind of smart. I didn't tell anyone for a while, not even Owen. But the more I used it myself, the more I realized I might actually have something again. So I reached out to a contact Owen had introduced me to long ago, Miriam, an independent angel investor with a strong ethical tech portfolio. I sent her a video of Marcy in action, with a short note, for low-tech humans who deserve high-tech help. She called me 2 hours later. "Marla, this is a breath of fresh air," she said. "Can I share this with a few partners?" I said yes. The meetings that followed felt different from the pitch I made 6 months earlier. Back then, I was trying to prove a system. This time, I was sharing a philosophy. People listened. I didn't want VC. I didn't want control stripped away by shareholders again. Miriam helped me set up a licensing-based model with low overhead. Small, intentional growth. Community-driven. By fall, Marcy launched quietly through a beta waitlist. Within 6 weeks, over 70,000 users had signed up. Artists. Writers. Single moms. Retirees. A therapist in upstate New York emailed me saying it was the first AI tool that didn't make her feel surveilled. A retired teacher in Utah said Marcy helped her remember to take her meds, check on her neighbors, and review her bucket list goals, all without selling her data or flashing endless pop-ups. It wasn't revolutionary in the Silicon Valley sense. But it was honest. And it was mine. And then, the headline. Novara Systems acquires struggling Titan data project from internal spin-off, cites market misalignment. Translation, Titan data flopped. Buried in the article, layoffs. Strategic downsizing. A quiet note about how Daryl was transitioning into new opportunities. I read it twice. Then 3 times. And I felt peace. Not joy. Not schadenfreude. Just the calm satisfaction of a storm passing. I didn't need to post about it. I didn't need to brag. But a few weeks later, I got a ping on LinkedIn from a recruiter who said Daryl had listed me as a reference. I stared at it for a long time. Then typed a single sentence in reply, "I'd recommend Daryl for roles where ambition is more important than integrity." And clicked send. The final touch came from Owen. He called me one evening from a tech conference in Santa Clara. Guess who just saw your system demoed on a panel? I was quiet. He laughed. They called you a quiet pioneer of decentralized ethical AI. The guy next to me asked if you were real or a legend. That made me smile. Did you tell him I'm real? I asked. Nope, he said. Told him you were better than real. A month later, I received a letter in the mail. Handwritten. Sloppy script. It was from Daryl. He didn't ask for a job. Or forgiveness. He just wrote, "You were right." I was hungry and afraid. I thought I had to win. But I lost something bigger along the way. You never needed revenge. You just needed time. I hope I get to find my version of that. I folded the letter and placed it in the drawer next to my prototype notes. Maybe he meant it. Maybe not. Didn't matter. Now, I sit on my porch most mornings with a cup of coffee and the ocean fog rolling in. Marcy hums in the background, quietly sorting my tasks, reminding me to call my sister, suggesting songs I loved in college. I'm not in boardrooms anymore. I don't need applause or applause slides. But I'm building. I'm helping. I'm seen. Not because I demanded it. Because I earned it, and then let go. And that is how I got my quiet revenge. No lawsuits. No takedowns. Just proving every single person who underestimated me wrong. By simply becoming what they couldn't imagine I could be, free.